All right, guys. Well, hey, we're going to do an episode with Chris Hamilton today. He's been on a number of times, and so I won't go too deep into his background. But we figured as a special start to this podcast, Chris, you and I have been talking nutrition, health, human optimization, all those things. We're both personally fascinated by it. And you said, hey, why don't we start the podcast? I'm going to give you a CGM or a continuous glucose monitoring system, and then we're going to take a look at the readings and use it as part of the conversation. So what are we about to do, Chris? Why don't you tell folks?
So I've got a continuous glucose monitor here. This is one of my own personal ones. I'm not a diabetic, but I've used these over the last year to understand better how my body responds to certain stimulus, like particularly food or sleep or exercise, what certain foods might trigger a higher response in my blood sugar, how I feel. So I'm really just trying to optimize how I feel, and this is just another means to be able to track.
It's a data point, right?
It's a data point.
Yeah, okay. All right, so guys, if you are listening right now and you hear us talking, maybe pause, go watch the video if you want to see this application. He's literally going to put it on my tricep right now, show me how it works. And that way, if you guys want to see the process, definitely go watch the video as well. But we'll talk about it throughout too. All right, you want to start?
So, yeah, I've got this. So you got the app downloaded.
I downloaded the app. Right? Yep, it's called Dexcom, right?
Yep,
is what we're using.
Yep, so the one we're going to use is a Dexcom G7.
Okay.
So here's the device. We've got the app. Go ahead and get an alcohol swab. I'm going to get an alcohol swab too. I've already washed my hands.
Okay, so we're going to do my left tricep.
Yep, and I'll swab it again for you because you're not getting exactly in the right spot. But I'm going to go ahead and clean my hands real quick. So you've seen me wash my hands, but I'm also going to kind of clean them up with an alcohol swab. I'm going to get a second one here.
Because this is actually going to prick the skin, right? It's going to poke through.
There's a little bitty needle that's inside of this. I don't know if it's a needle or if it's a sensor or whatnot.
Okay.
Oh, man, did you do some push-ups before we did this?
Bro, you better believe it. Hey, I knew we were going to be on camera flexing the triceps.
Okay. All right, so now you're clean. So you've already scanned this, right? So it's looking for it.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew this.
Okay.
And then we're going to put it onto your tricep.
So it comes in a little capsule. It's like a plastic capsule,
You can see
right?
that. You can see the needle on there. It's tiny, and it's not going to go straight in. It's going to burrow under the skin. It's not going to hurt.
Okay.
It's super comfortable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it onto the back of your arm. I'm going to push it in, and then on 3. 1, 2, 3. I did it on. So
you did it on 2. That's a doctor's trick, right? You do it on 2.
Trick, yep, I did.
Hey, I literally did not even feel that.
So what's going to happen is it's going to search for that sensor.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and put the seal on the back.
All right. So the seal goes over it or something?
Over it.
Okay. Trying to awkwardly stick out my arm so you can reach it without getting out of frame here. Okay. Okay, cool.
And then I'm going to peel that
off. All right.
You're good to go. That thing's waterproof now. You're done.
So how long am I going to probably be wearing this, Chris?
So this will last 10 days.
Okay, so it'll last 10 days.
10 days. So you got 10 days to do all the experimentation that you want.
Okay, so I'm trying to pair right now. Would like to pair with your phone.
Yep. So it's going to probably take about 10 to 15 minutes to warm up.
Okay.
Actually, it says 26.
Yeah, 26 minutes. So what we'll do is...
It won't take 26 minutes.
Okay, but we'll come back to this. So, guys, we just wanted to start the podcast off this way. We thought it'd be kind of a unique way to shape the conversation. Again, we're talking kind of self-hacking, right? Neither one of us are doctors. Chris and I were going to be very clear. We're not doctors. I do have an exercise science degree, but I don't use that in my daily life other than just for personal use. And so we're really just two middle-aged men, dads that care about our health and study this on our own and want to just have a conversation. And then we'll bring it into the world of benefits that we operate in as well. And I think there's an application for this stuff for employer sponsored plans that we'll hopefully kind of brainstorm on as well. Welcome to Self-Funded with Spencer, sponsored by Pareto Health, ClaimDoc, and PlanSight. Whether we're discussing innovative new healthcare strategies, exposing hidden revenue streams or misaligned incentives, or even just cheering on the next generation of this industry, we promise you that you're going to learn something. So thank you for joining us for another great conversation about the future of healthcare. All right, guys, we just did the CGM. Chris put it on. We're waiting for the app and the sensor to warm up, and so I will come back to that once that happens, and then we'll pick that up and we'll show you what I'm seeing in real time, live data on my phone, so you can see the results. But Chris, before we start this full conversation, you've been on here a number of times. That's fine. People can go watch those. But real quick, if this is the first time they've seen you, who are you, man?
So Chris Hamilton. I'm a partner and the employee benefits practice leader at Hotchkiss Insurance. We're a statewide insurance brokerage. and I lead our employee benefits consulting practice.
Cool. Yeah. And you've come on to talk about sales. You've come on to talk about benefits. Then you were on my 100th episode roundtable. You just did the MSK roundtable that hasn't come out yet. And so I think this is actually your fifth appearance, which is
fifth or sixth.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're definitely the most shown guest on the podcast. But this is where I think you and I have a real serious personal interest in this type of stuff. So we're going to talk about health, personal health, and how we shape this. We're not doctors. We've already covered all that. But when did you get into really looking into this stuff, and why did that happen for you?
I've always been interested in fitness and performance because I played football from Pee Wee through college. And so it's morphed over the years. Before it was how strong, how fast, how big can I get to play my sport? And then when I finished playing football, it was how can I lose this weight and just become a better version of myself? But personally, I became very interested in health, not aesthetics. It's health because of my family history. Both my father and my mom have had to have bypass surgery. My mom's had to have multiple bypass surgeries for different parts of her body, but her heart and her aortic and she had a kidney that didn't survive because it got clogged up. And heart disease runs very deep in my family. In fact, my brother at the age of 43 had to have a bypass surgery.
Okay.
And he's 4 years
Is
older
bypass,
than me.
would they open your sternum?
That's a full, they open. It's open heart surgery to bypass clogged arteries.
Jeez.
And so I've seen two people, personally seen two people, my mother and my brother, go through this, and watching them wake up from the surgery is a traumatic event.
Yeah.
I mean, you're cut open.
Well, the interesting thing, and I don't want to stop you in your story, but my interest in health and nutrition came as a result of my father having an event at 37. He had 4 stents put in. Was it angioplasty? I think is what it's called. I forgot the term, but I was 12 or 13 at the time. Prevented him from going overseas. There was a soccer tournament we were going to in the summer, so he couldn't go. And so he had that surgery. Came out fine. He's still with us this day. He's 66 now. But that was a pivotal moment, when a very impressionable time in my life, where I started going, oh, well, maybe I should look into this, because if this happened to my dad, and 37 seems young, maybe I should start now exploring how to prevent that from happening in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we learned early on. I was in middle school, and I learned that I had really high cholesterol. And I started on a statin when I was probably in 6th or 7th grade.
I mean, that seems young, man. You tell me that over coffee. Is that that's pretty atypical, right? To start that young?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I would imagine so.
Yeah.
But my cholesterol was high enough at that time, and we knew we had a familial history of issues. And so I was put on a statin. I had lots of issues with them over the years. And eventually, as I became an adult, I just decided I'm not going to take these anymore, because I'd have these, my liver enzymes would get high. I'd get muscle pain, all these adverse reactions to it. And I was like, you know what? These aren't for me. I'm not doing it. And I tried to diet and exercise, and we can talk about that too, what the medical community, the general medical community, thinks is good nutritional advice. It turns out it was horrible. It was actually contributing to my increasing triglycerides and cholesterol. And I just decided, I'm not going to take these medicines. And it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I got linked up with my doctor now, a concierge doctor. She doesn't take insurance. I pay her a subscription fee, and she's available to me year round. I mean, I could probably call her now and get her on the phone. Yeah. And
we'll have her fact check the things we say here.
Yeah, she can check. Kathy, you can check on this for us. But she, really not only took the time, it was hours I spent with her on intake, getting my family history, running extensive tests that traditional doctors do not order and insurance does not pay for. So I had to pay for these. But we learned very quickly I was extremely high risk for some issues. And she set me on this path to get me healthy and help me feel better. Because I didn't realize how horrible I felt.
Until you started to feel better.
I started to feel better.
Yeah, isn't that crazy, right? I think there's a lot of people walking around today that have chronic inflammation, chronic conditions that they've sort of just learned to live with because it feels normal. And until there's a massive improvement like you experience, they don't realize, geez, I felt awful all the time, because it was just considered normal at that point. It was accepted, right? I think that happens to a lot of people if they make those massive changes. I want to ask you though, Chris, because we kind of glossed over, but you were telling me you got up to 270 so you're playing college football. Part of it was you had to force yourself to eat, right? Which is a kind of a weird psychological thing to do, to try to gain a massive amount of weight for a sport. But once you were done, you realized probably that was unhealthy, especially based on your family history. And so you tried to lose a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So what was the experience like? And like, how has your maybe your routine, your diet, et cetera, changed from those years to what you do today?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I'll just give you a typical day of eating for me. I would wake up in the morning, and the first thing I would do is I would drink a shake, and it would be a weight gain shake with a protein shake on top of it.
Okay.
So it'd probably be about 500 to 700 calories upon waking.
Yeah.
And then while I'm drinking that, I'm making breakfast, which is usually 10 to 12 eggs, a bowl of oatmeal, fruit, toast.
Holy cow.
And then I would have a mid-morning snack. So between my classes, I would probably have a shake or a sandwich, eat a massive lunch. And then before practice, I'd have another snack or a shake. And then after practice, I'd have a huge meal. And before I went to bed, I would drink another one of those weight gainer shakes. I was probably taking in 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would set an alarm. I had a shake next to my bed. So I'd wake up around 1 a.m., drink
Chug
the
a shake. Oh my
a
God.
protein shake, and go to sleep. And so losing the weight after football was actually really easy because I just quit eating all that
How did you
food.
feel? I mean, obviously you were doing a specific thing to perform a specific way, but how did you feel physically the rest of the day when you were carrying that weight?
I had a lot of ups and downs as far as energy would go. I felt like I had to eat all the time.
Yeah.
And if I didn't eat, if I skipped a meal, I just felt like I would crash. And I would imagine that's probably just the fuel sources. It wasn't necessarily the most nutritious food. But yeah, I probably looking back didn't feel very well. It didn't feel good to carry all that weight.
Well, no, and that's what I look back and I was the opposite. I played soccer in college. So cardiovascular fitness, right, was a big portion of it. You know, actual anaerobic or physical muscle fitness wasn't as big a deal as the aerobic capacity. So I was playing at 140 to 145 pounds, depending on before or after a game. So I was a pretty slight guy. I'm 5'8". Now I walk around 165, and I'm much more focused on adding muscle than I am necessarily cardiovascular or VO2 max and things like that. But I also ate terrible. I mean, versus what I know today, this is 20 years ago when the low fat craze was what everybody was the marketing was everything around like avoid fat at all costs, right? And they were doing those weird things, the potato chips to strip out the fat, but so you could still eat potato chips and we thought it was healthy. All that garbage, right, that we know now was nonsense. So I didn't feel great and I'd have massive ups and downs just like you. Everything was focused on that 2-hour practice or that 90-minute game. As long as I optimally performed during that window of time, the rest of the day be damned for the most part. Of course, now at 41 years old, a dad, I don't play soccer anymore. The way I want to feel and operate and the way that I want my baseline to be higher at all times rather than peaks and valleys like I used to have. I mean, it's night and day difference the way that I live.
Yeah. Well, I want to focus on longevity at this point.
Yeah.
I've got kids.
Yeah.
I want to be around to see and play with my grandkids. And, I mentioned this probably in a different episode. I tell my team this all the time. We don't get paid to shoot a basketball like LeBron James or to hit a baseball or throw a pass like Tom Brady does. But make no mistake, we are professionals. We get paid to do something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you think we speak for a living, we think for a living, we have to provide advice to people, we have to have energy to carry our work out. And the way we feel, the energy that we have, the shape that we're in affects all of that. And so not only should we be thinking about practicing our craft, which is, in my mind, when I drive, I think about conceptually, what is it that I'm trying to explain to an employer because it's complex? How do I break it down and make it simpler?
Do you talk out loud to yourself?
I do talk out loud to myself. And I think to myself, what's an easy way to break this really complex topic down into something simple that somebody will understand? And once they understand the basic...
I thought I was the only one that did this, man. Okay.
Once somebody, when you break it down to the... Think about... I'm trying to think of who it was. Is it Picasso that would do these really simple drawings? Or I'm going to butcher this, but somebody would take a really like a horse drawing. It's blanking me, but very simple picture. He would strip it down to this most elemental form. Once you can get somebody to understand what it is that you're drawing, they understand the concept of it, then you can build on the complex. And I see too many times people, I'm getting off topic here, but they'll start with something that's really
exactly
complex.
What you're talking about, yeah.
And then you lose the people that don't want to, they can't follow it. And then you can't build from there. So
well, a true master in communication is the one that can communicate most effectively in the fewest words to the most people, right? It's not, you're not impressing somebody that you know something that nobody else knows, right? Because nobody else comes along for the ride. If you're a master communicator, you bring as many people into the conversation as possible because you keep it simple and you do distill it down to the most basic form. Yeah. I don't know who the artist is that you're referring to, but I know what you're talking about. And I thought I was the only one that would drive around in the car and go, hey, if I pick this subject of a captive, not to get off topic, how do I explain that so stinking simply that everybody would understand it. And it's an obsessive thing that you go through, right?
The best thing I found to explain complex things to people is analogies, because things in life, in our world around us, rhyme. There's a synchronous nature of our world where things are very similar. Give an example to somebody that they'll already understand, and then they'll be able to apply it. And so I think about our professional lives. I'll go to a conference, and I used to be this guy. You go out, stay out really late at night, you drink too much, you get short slept, and then you go into the learning sessions the next day and you feel like crap, and you can't think very clearly, and you're just not very productive. And I see people that do that on a daily basis and think they're going to walk into a client's office the next day and have the energy, have the mental clarity and acuity to be able to help somebody. And so my thought is, the better we feel, the more energy we have, the better we're going to perform. And it's going to be, it's going to,
when you practice how you play. I mean, they used to hammer that home, right? And so like you're saying, maybe that's not a game, but if your game is going to that prospect's office and ultimately try to compel them to work with you, right? Yep. If you're practicing terribly the night before, sleeping terribly the night before, not feeding your body and fueling yourself, you will perform worse in that setting if that's your game. And so I treat, like we were at Healthcare in Harmony a couple weeks ago in Austin with Scott Smith and the True folks. I had to give 2 hours of self-funded training. Granted, it was broken up with 15 minutes in between, so it was almost like I had a halftime. I woke up that morning. I didn't drink more than like the one drink the night before. I tried to get as much sleep as I could. I woke up, I had coffee. I don't like to eat before speaking because I don't like to be weighed down if it's in the morning, of course. And so everything I was doing was trying to perform. I had a job to do. I had a lot of eyes on me because I was on stage. So I wanted to make sure I delivered in that time frame. And so I liken that to being an athlete just like you. And so I want to control as many variables as possible to ensure the highest likelihood of an optimal outcome.
Yeah. When you think about not only in that one event, you want to be at the top of your game, but think about the lives that we live today and the economy that we work in today. It's highly paced, high stress. There's a lot going on. Many of us are traveling again. When you layer on all of those variables and you take two people, somebody who really focuses on their health, wellness, their energy levels, their fitness, and then you take somebody who's sedentary, that drinks a lot, that doesn't sleep very well, put those two people through the same gauntlet, who do you think is going to come out on the opposite end of that 30 days, 90 days, a year from now better?
It's the consistency of the high performance. It's not you do it one time, it's you do it 100 times in a row.
Make no mistake, your fitness affects, even if you have a desk job, your fitness is going to affect your performance over the long run.
100%.
Because it's your energy level.
Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for 3 main reasons. Number 1, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number 2, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number 3, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments. Well, so what are you doing today, though? So we talked about you being, hey, I want to gain as much weight, I want to perform on the football field, to Chris today, dad of 4, right?
Yeah,
4. Yes.
4.
So what are you doing? Like, what's your routine? Kind of walk me through.
So I've got a lot of things that I do, and a lot of these I've formulated with my doctor. So one of the very first things my doctor had me do was fasting.
Okay.
And I actually started fasting almost 10 years ago, and I was doing the intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And so I'd been doing that 16-8 type deal.
Yeah.
You know,
So 16 hours of fasting, 8-hour feeding window.
I did that for about a decade.
Yeah.
She got me into more extended fasting, and I thought to myself, you got to be crazy. I'm not doing that. And so she said,
how frequent would you do it extended?
So I would do it at least quarterly. Okay. And she knew I was a data guy. And so we can talk about all the different devices and the way I capture data and how I think that's applicable to employers. But took my blood before I did the fast. And she said, just do a 3-day fast, and let's take your blood at the end of the fast, and let's see the difference in certain markers like inflammation and cholesterol and these other things, hormone levels and those sorts of things. And it was a pretty big difference. So I thought, okay, you got me.
Well, how hard was the first 3-day fast? Because it's a long fast for most people, myself included. I've never done a 3-day.
It was hard. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. But I think the shorter fasting that I've been doing for many years prior helped give me a leg up to somebody who's just starting.
And you've done all the way up to a 7, right?
I did a 7-day water only fast, and I worked out every single day during that fast. I lost a bunch of weight. I wouldn't do it that way again, but people think you got to have food to have energy and those sorts of things. Some of the best workouts I had, like I was lifting weights and doing cardio in day 5. Yeah. And I felt indestructible.
Well, there's somebody I was reading about this morning, ran 5 days, 5 marathons, fasted all 5 of them just to see what happens, right? To prove that fat adaptation in these stores that we have could power, I think it was a female, power her through the 5 days. Now, granted, she wasn't running, world record pace. She just wanted to prove I could do this 5 days in a row completely fasted. I'm sure she was doing water and electrolytes and things like that. But the point is the capacity is there. It's just the mental struggle we have to assume that we can do these type of things.
Yeah. And for me, I knew that it was going to have some sort of benefit. I trusted my doctor. And once I started working with her, she helped me understand all the things that the medical community had been trying to do for me in the years prior, including my former primary care doctor, which I think he's a great guy, but he's not able to practice the same type of medicine. He's in the fee-for-service model, not concierge medicine, so he doesn't have the time. He has a high patient load. But she has the time to do the research. She had the background. She was willing to not only tell me what, but why, and teach me. And when you get that buy-in and understanding, it allowed me to let her do the experimentation on me that she wanted. So the medicine that they provide is very precision based on the one individual person, because what is going to work for you may not work for me, and vice versa. So,
well, that's what I like about you, man. And one of the things that inspired, I think, why we're having this conversation today is we practice a lot of the same things and we think very similar around these subjects. However, you're much more meticulous about document tracking and pivoting once you find out new information. And so one of the things that you told me, and I think you did this on a previous episode, you did, was it a pharmacogenetic study to determine you were a slow metabolizer?
Yes, I've done a number of different tests, but one of them was a genetic test to determine how I metabolize certain medications. And my doctor knew immediately, you're having an issue with statins. Let's figure out if you have this one particular gene that makes you a slow metabolizer. And I have that gene. Okay. I also have a copy of an ApoE4, which is what they believe to be the dementia gene or the Alzheimer's gene. So you learn all these neat things. Some of it's scary, some of it's informative, but it really, once you know those things, you can start adapting a lifestyle that helps support what your goals are to try to circumvent or minimize.
Well, see, that level, the reason I brought that up is a level of specificity around the individualization of that drug, right? So you were taking a statin, didn't quite have the knowledge base that you had after you got that genetic test. Then it altered the frequency and the dosage. And so you were able to, in doing so, keep the benefits from the statin, at least perceived to be, and then negate or completely get rid of the side effects, right?
Yeah, no side effects.
Yeah, so that level, it's not even necessarily maybe the drug is bad per se, it's the frequency or the dosage that you have to be more precise about.
I think the thing you got to do is you have to have information. Yeah. And you can actually, we talk about how things rhyme, like there's this similarity. This is the same thing for employer health plans. I'm not going to talk about employer health plans, let's talk about the health piece though, but you can't manage what you can't measure. And you can't manage variables if you don't have the right environment to test them. So I tinker a lot with my doctor, and I've hired lots of other specialists and trainers and other things to help me figure these things out. So again, I'm not a doctor. I only know what's worked for me, and I'm a data-driven guy. I keep a lot of information. I get my blood checked. I get a very comprehensive blood panel every quarter. Okay. And I have a spreadsheet. I track it all. And I can look back over the last 5 or 6 years, quarter by quarter, at changes in cholesterol, changes in hormone levels, changes in inflammation, all sorts of things, changes in, even down to the individual vitamin level, vitamin D, the B vitamins.
Well, so what have been the most profound things? So like if somebody's listening to this, right, guy or gal, doesn't matter, and you could be 25 or 55, it doesn't really matter, but of the things that you think have had the most profound impact or changed for the better your life, what would those, whether it's testing or behaviors, what would you say those things are? You mentioned fasting or intermittent fasting.
I think that's helpful. And there's a lot of other things that I do. So my doctor got me into sauning and cold plunging and all those other things. I've done those are very helpful. The number one thing I found that has changed my life is sleep.
Sleep. Okay.
That's the number one thing that's changed my life.
And you're tracking that with your Apple Watch?
I have an app called Auto Sleep.
Okay.
And it'll track. Some people use Whoop bands and whatever else, but I want to know how much REM sleep, how much deep sleep, how much total time of sleep, what's my, go to bed and waking times. And, I track those sorts of things, and I can track variables. So I used to drink alcohol, and I still do occasionally, but
Same. Yeah.
I've noticed what it does to my sleep. It destroys
sleep.
It destroys.
There's
deep
no
sleep.
doubt. Yeah.
And you may have 8 or 9 hours total time in sleep in bed, but you still wake up really groggy and foggy and that sort of thing. And I don't want that.
I never really probably get 8 total hours. I'm a 5:30 riser kind of guy, so that means I'd have to go to bed at 9:30, and that's not always realistic with 2 little kids. And my wife and I want to have a chance to spend at least 30 minutes together, right? So I don't always get to bed, I would say, on time to get 8 hours, but I am very careful about the consumption of alcohol, especially during the week and when I know I'm getting up for work. But I can tell you, one single drink now at 41 years old has a profound impact on the quality of sleep, the way that I feel in the morning. And it's not just the grogginess, I feel, and I haven't tested it, so this is where a CGM will come in. I feel that it lowers my blood sugar when I wake up. And so I've started my day off in a hole. And sometimes it's harder to get or longer to get myself back to what I would consider baseline to feel good, to operate at the right level. And so why would I want to keep doing that if every day I'm starting below baseline and having to work my way back up to baseline just to feel good again? What if I just eliminated the thing that I feel takes me below baseline so that I start every day feeling the same way?
So you got to this point, and it's a question that my doctor always asks me when I'll say, well, what about this test? And the number's not high or low enough. And she'll say, but how do you feel? How do you feel is a very big, it's an important factor to take into consideration. So there's a lot of things that I track, whether it be sleep, whether it's the number of calories I burn with a fitness app, or whether it's my blood glucose using a monitor, VO2 max. I've had that tested because I wanted to know a baseline. I perform physical fitness tests on myself at regular intervals. I have a certain testing standard that I go through. I just want to know, how am I doing? Am I keeping up with myself? I'm not competing against anybody but myself. I want to have a certain level of fitness as I age. And so I keep all of these things in a spreadsheet. I track every one of my workouts. It's because I want to know what is working, but I don't let the numbers on the page dictate how I feel. When I look at these, I say, how do I feel? Is this helpful to me? And it's really forced me to change. It's changed a lot of my thoughts about what is helpful to me and helps me perform.
How do I feel is a decent barometer, but I was actually talking to a doctor here recently, and she was like, we have an epidemic of the I feel fine syndrome, because we were just talking about earlier. If your norm is feeling like crap, but I feel fine because this is how I normally feel, the I feel fine syndrome to her was that, yeah, you feel fine until you don't, and you have a massive heart attack or a stroke or something like that. And so if you're only going off feel, this is one of the things, again, that I'm starting to think about, why am I not as meticulous as I probably should be, is because I feel fine. I feel great most days. Could be something going on underneath that is a potentially catastrophic event if I'm not staying on top of those things. And so I think that's where, okay, so my blood sugar is actually a little, okay, so we've got...
That's not too high.
Not too high, right?
It's not what I would have expected based on what you just ate.
Yeah. So what did I eat? So my blood sugar, just so you guys know, the immediate reading is 123, which is a little bit elevated, right?
It's got the arrow kind of pointing up.
So it's going up as well. Okay. So what I've had for breakfast, I've had 2 cups of coffee and an espresso over the course of from 5:30 to now it's 11 o'clock. Then I had about a 6-ounce skirt steak, so they call it arrachera, 2 eggs, and a little bit of berries. So that's what I've consumed this morning. You think it's the berries?
Yeah, because there's no sugar in anything that you've...
But the berries themselves, right, are pretty nominal sugar.
But there were some bananas in there, though.
I took out the bananas. I don't eat the bananas. Okay. So I had strawberries and blueberries.
So I've tinkered with all those different variables, and so the fruit is one that will... Have you worked out this morning?
I have not. I work out in the evening.
Okay. So when I first started using it, and I wore one of these for about 6 months, I tested I made a running list before I started because I don't want to wear one of these in perpetuity. I want to wear it just to run these experiments to understand how my body is impacted by certain variables.
Okay.
Sleep, exercise, fasted. There's certain foods like berries or cheesecake or steak, or how does my body respond to these certain things? One of my favorite foods is Chipotle. And I learned.
Are you a burrito guy or a bowl guy?
I do
or
the
what?
bowl.
Okay.
I like the bowl.
Right. With rice or no rice?
Sometimes 2 bowls.
Okay.
So preferably I would use rice, but I don't just because of what I've learned. In the now, if I work out, here's the thing I have learned about using CGM. Exercise is like a free pass. Don't take this the wrong way, but it's almost a free pass to eat whatever you want. For me, it is. If I do any sort of like calisthenic or weight training or high intensity intervals on a assault bike or running or something like that, I can pretty much eat whatever I want. My blood sugar's not going to move.
Okay.
I was like, oh, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to give it the extreme test. I'm going to eat the full burrito with the flour tortilla and 2 pieces of cheesecake.
And it still didn't raise your blood sugar?
It got up to probably about 130, 140, which is not a high spike an hour after you eat. So you're going to want to look at this about 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah, we probably should say it because we ate what, roughly 90 minutes ago, maybe somewhere around there. Yeah. So now I'm going to be obsessive about this and monitor it over the day. But so maybe tomorrow have the same breakfast sans fruit. So just go the two eggs and the steak, or maybe bacon or something like that, and I'll see, do I have a similar spike? But the other confounding factor is now I need to think back, what did I have last night?
I don't think that's going to have much of an impact.
You don't think so? Okay.
I don't notice that. Because you'll wake up fasted, and as long as I've tracked my blood sugar using one of these, it's a pretty tight range when I wake up.
Yeah, and granted, I mean, I think I had it dinner probably around 7:30 to 8. PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. But what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals. But anyway, so this is just the initial data point, right? So not a freakishly high data point, but because it's not a fasted glucose level, then I need to kind of look at it throughout the day. I'll look at it at night. I'll look at it when I wake up. And then you said this thing will stay active for what, about 10 days?
About 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 10 and a half days. So you'll get 10 days out of it. It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that you'll be able to track with that, and kind of piecing all these together. So somebody might say, well, why would you want a CGM, and what does that do for you? Or why would you wear a Fitbit or a Whoop or an Apple Watch? What are you getting from that? How does that actually help you with your life? And I think about the gauges in a car.
Okay.
Right. If you have you drive a high performance car. Some people drive a car that only has the speed on it, right? But there's people that are interested in measuring what's the temperature, how fast am I going, what are the RPMs, how much fuel do I have, all of these different things. And that's all of these devices give you those sorts of output on your body. So I think about the Apple Watch. It helps me track my sleep. It helps me track my steps. That's like my odometer. I mean, how far did I go?
Okay.
The calorie counts. That's my fuel gauge, right?
Okay.
And I think of the CGM as more like the temperature gauge of my body. And it's not a temperature, but it gives me this ability to understand how my body's responding to certain types of fuel.
Well, and that's just it. This is a singular data point, right? I obviously need to add other data points to it if I want to be scientific. Because if you look at just one singular data point, it doesn't tell you the rest of what's going on and the contributing factors to it.
Well, the one thing you're going to want to do with that app is as you eat, you're going to want to go in to the app and put what you ate.
Oh, put what I ate.
And then you'll be able to go back and look historically, man, when my blood sugar spiked, what was it that I ate leading up to that?
Well, you did say coffee though can contribute to it.
It does.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
So when I wake up in the morning and drink a cup of coffee, it'll raise my blood sugar probably 10 points. And my doctor says it has something to do with cortisol and converting glucose. I don't know. This is where I'm not a doctor, but I just take her word for it. It's like, it raises. I noticed that when I drink coffee. The other thing, I think I mentioned, I cold plunge first thing in the morning. That catapults your blood sugar much lower.
Really? Okay.
It like dramatically. So I'd wake up and I'd probably have a 89 to 95 fasting glucose in the morning, and I would jump in a cold plunge, and immediately after it would probably be in the 50s. Critically low.
Critically low.
Yeah, but then it pops right back up.
Yeah.
It pops right back up.
Yeah, because what's your body essentially doing there? It doesn't know that I'm Chris and I'm hopping in a cold plunge, it knows like, holy crap, I'm in a really, really terribly cold water and I need to survive, right?
That's
so
right.
It's making changes to your physiological changes to ensure your survival. We've just decided to add this to our regimens nowadays. And I don't do it as frequently as you, but what do you call this, Chris? I mean, biohacking is a term that I think you and I both kind of cringe at. I think that's the extreme end of this.
Yeah.
What do you kind of consider this topic or this theme that we're covering here?
I like to think of it as optimization.
Okay.
Like I want to feel my best, and whether it's you're talking about diets, and I say diet, I'm not talking about like a fad diet. I'm talking about just the foods that we eat,
how you eat. Yep.
The nutrients that are in those foods. Are our bodies able to absorb them? Do we need a vitamin supplement?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to not take any sort of vitamins. I'm not taking pills. I'm not doing that. I would drink a protein shake or something like that. But having my blood tested, and she's testing for all these different types of fatty acids, EPA, DHA, ALA, all the different vitamins, folate, B12, all the different vitamins. I was deficient in a lot of them. And no matter what I ate, she would prescribe, well, add these foods to your diet. Let's see how it works.
Okay.
Still deficient. So I started supplementing.
Interesting. Okay.
And trying to dial in what dosage of these vitamins should I be taking to get optimal levels in my blood.
Was there any specific vitamins that you can recall that you were definitively deficient in?
Vitamin D.
D? Okay.
Yeah, super low in D. Think about it, right? We cover our bodies.
Yeah.
We don't go in the sun. When we do, we're wearing hats and
Sunscreen,
sunscreen.
yeah.
Our bodies are naturally create vitamin D, and so we're all probably deficient in it. And I would say when I started taking that and getting my levels up there, I noticed that I started feeling better. I was very deficient in vitamin B12 and EPA. So,
Okay.
the fatty acids from fish, that sort of thing.
Well, I was actually reading yesterday, vitamin E is kind of an anti-inflammatory. So especially, it's a really high dosage that would be required. But I was reading a whole thread about IBS and how seed oils can contribute to IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome and all the distress that happens and inflammation. That vitamin E was one of those things that was suggested as a way to counteract it, right? Obviously, their argument was get rid of the seed oils so you don't have the issues. But hey, vitamin E is a way to sort of help mitigate some of the inflammation that happens as a result. And so you can go down this rabbit hole and you can take it way too far. I was mentioning that guy, Brian Johnson. Are you familiar with him? He's like in his mid 40s. He's that guy that wants to try to live forever, and he takes like 120 pills a day. And I mean, he's a zealot. He's extreme. He's almost this odd duck. So you can take it too far. But there is somewhere on that continuum, kind of the sweet spot, right? Where you're optimizing health, you're optimizing quality of life, you're looking at longevity, you're not becoming so obsessive that it becomes ruinous to every other aspect of your life, but you find whatever that groove is and you can follow, right? Because adherence is a big part of this as well, right? Consistency and adherence.
Yeah, so if you're going to simplify it down, if somebody said to me, you can't do all the things that you're doing anymore, you have to pick a handful of things. How do you make it really simple? What are the things that the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20. What is the 20% that I do that gives me 80% of my result? I would guess it is sleep is number one.
Okay.
It's removing overly processed foods from my diet. I try to eat things that have one ingredient, beef, chicken, apple, whole foods. I'm trying not to eat processed things. So try to eat food that looks like it came from nature. And I would say exercise is a big one.
Yeah.
Moving your body. I feel better. I'm ADHD. I will go crazy, I feel, if I do not move my body. My wife knows that. She supports it, but I have to get out and move
I have
my
to
body.
as well. I mean, it's almost like I get almost mad some days that I like when I know I want to work. And some days I decide not to work out, right?
It's like little Smashing Pumpkins rat in a cage.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I need screaming in my ears too. It's a weird dynamic I operate with. But the only disagreement I have you there, and maybe I should put sleep as a top priority, but I think exercise to me is the highest priority, because I think you can negate some of the negatives that come from poor sleep by exercise. I've heard this discussed recently as well. Again, right, these things are continually evolving, the understanding of it, but I think exercise is the great equalizer.
I will challenge you on that.
Okay,
and you can do this experiment on yourself, because I have done it.
Okay, all right.
Just sleep 5 hours a night, 4 hours a night, get up and exercise, and do that for a week and see how you feel.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I did this, and this is why I've changed my philosophy on this, and I'll tell you what I do. But then also sleep for 8 hours and work out just a couple of times and tell me which one you feel better.
Yeah.
And so because of that, and I didn't do that by choice, it was just a life that I was living at the time, and I didn't get enough sleep. I was like, well, I'm going to work out. And eventually it catches up with you. It's burning the candle at both ends. Now I don't even use an alarm.
Okay. So you can get up at 5 or 5:30 without an alarm, or
part of it's my golden doodle. Part of it's my wife. But the other thing is, I go to bed early enough now that if I need to get up early, I'm going to go to bed earlier.
Okay.
And I do now naturally. I'm trying to go to bed earlier. I used to go to bed really late, and I would wake up to an alarm, and I would be tired, and I would go work out and do that, just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then my doctor's telling me, you really need to get more sleep. It's going to make you feel better. And so I've realized the priority now for me is sleep, and I will go to bed and no alarm and when I wake up.
Well, and I don't even think we disagreed, because I'm not saying it's an either or situation. But on balance, the thing that I would put as the number one priority is exercise. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I need to, improve and increase the length of my sleep as well. I don't think I'm chronically underslept, but I am not your sleep hacker like you are, where you're very, very methodical about when you go to bed and tracking the quality and the depth of sleep. So that's maybe one of those things I just need to add to the regimen of things that I track now.
Yeah, and you don't want to become overly obsessive with it. There can be a detriment to it. I've had issues with sleep. I have sleep apnea, and I was diagnosed years ago with that, over a decade ago. And I thought, how could I have sleep apnea? I'm in shape, I'm young, and, but yeah, turns out I had it. And I was always tired. I was drinking coffee until 6 p.m. at night. From the moment I woke up until almost to bed, and that really helped me. And then I just realized, even though I had sleep apnea and I was treating it, I just still didn't. So wasn't prioritizing the length and the quality of sleep. There's a lot of things that affect the quality of your sleep. You talk about the lighting in your house, looking at screens before you go to bed, looking at things that are upsetting. So we're in a stressful environment where sometimes
read an email or something.
You read an email that pisses you off and you ruminate on it. That happened. I mean, honestly, that's what woke me up this morning. I had something that happened yesterday, and I woke up with my heart racing because I must have been dreaming about it. I don't know, but I woke up and couldn't go back to sleep. And I was like, well, I'm awake. Let's go. Yeah. So
I feel that, and I think for me, it's one of the things you said a little while ago. It's like doing the big picture stuff, trusting that, we have stressful lives. We have kids. We have, you're running a practice. I obviously have a lot of responsibilities at Pareto. Like, our lives are really hard charging, right? So for me, can I do the things that are the biggest picture things consistently that I can adhere to over the long haul? I don't like fad diets. I don't obsess over like adding red light therapy or adding a cold plunge every day. Like, some of those things are probably incremental improvements and things. And if you have the ability to do so, go for it. But I'm doing the big picture stuff every single day, so that the framework is built, and you don't have to put a lot of thought into those things. Once those become part of it's not even just habitual, it's part of your lifestyle, then you're not thinking about those things, and those things are giving you the highest likelihood of success, even though I could be a little bit more precise about a lot of them.
Start small. Yeah. The advice I would give is start small, sleep, move your body. I don't care if it's walking or push-ups, pull-ups, or doing weightlifting, doing a fitness class. Move your body, and try to eat whole foods. If you do that, that's 80% of the solution right there. If you do those three things, because the food thing is a big issue. It's how we fuel our body. There's a lot of crap that's put into our processed food. We talked about yogurt. You eat yogurt. If you eat one of the commercial brands, it's filled with gums and fillers, and
they add sugar, sugar.
There's all sorts of things that are added to it, right? So that's not really it's not
yogurt
food
anymore.
No, it's something else, right? So it's trying to eat whole foods, fuel your body right. But then from there, once you get that down, you can add other things in incrementally without adding a lot of work. So I'll give you an example. I haven't been sauning a lot recently, but I did last night. My wife and I did that, something we do that is kind of a bonding time. We'll sit in there together. We've got one in our garage. I love to cold plunge first thing in the morning. After I get out of that, I'm going to brush my teeth, but I stand in front of a red light.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've done that for years.
Yeah. Mark Tess is big on red lights as well.
I think it helps with inflammation. It helps with scars. I've had several orthopedic surgeries, and it'll make your scars disappear. I had a hip replacement. I have a huge scar down my glute. It's about a 12-inch scar, and I'll stand in front of that thing, and you can't even see the scar anymore.
What?
Hardly.
Really?
It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. It's crazy what it does. But the other thing that's crazy, It has improved my eyesight.
I've heard this.
It's improved my eyesight.
And is it not similar to like this idea that when we wear sunglasses, it actually turns off our body's signals to something, right? I've heard that you should actually expose your eyes to morning sun and not cover them with sunglasses.
Those are the rays that are coming through in the morning sun. Afternoon, like midday sun, you probably don't want to look at that. I don't know about that. I wear sunglasses.
But I'm wondering if it's a similar methodology.
And I didn't even think I was doing it to improve my eyesight, but I went to the ophthalmologist and they look into your eye and the blood vessels, and he's like, wow, the vasculature of your eyes is really grown. And he like looks back over what it was several years ago. And he's like, man, it seems like your eyesight's improved. How is that possible? 2025 and now it's 2020. It's like,
no kidding.
Yeah. As I've aged, it's gotten better.
So what kind of red light is this sitting on?
It's like a panel. I just bought one of the big panels. I hung it up in my closet. Which is, it's kind of weird. I brush my teeth in my closet. Yeah, I shut the door. It's a walk-in closet. I shut the door. The lights are off. I turn the red light on and I stand in front of it. And
how long?
Sometimes 5 minutes. Sometimes 10. Sometimes 3. So yeah, just depends on the day. But I try to do it. That's like the James Clear Atomic Habits. If you don't have time to do it, scale it. So I make it. If I am home, I'm going to stand in front of that red light first thing in the morning after I get out of a cold plunge.
And you're cold plunging in. Do you have an outdoor cold plunge, like a tub? Okay, all right.
So that's actually one of the next things I'm going to try to invest in is I'm going to put one. So I've built a gym inside of the garage. And so if that's where the sauna is, that's where all my workout equipment is. I've got it rubber floored. I want to put a cold plunge in there so that I can that's going to be where I go. I want to get a nice one. So the one I have now is a little austere.
You're challenging me on a lot of things, which I appreciate.
But you don't have to do those things.
No. I just say, and I'm not challenging in I feel threatened. It's just like, you're somebody that I respect immensely. I hear a lot of the folks that I follow, influencers, talk about these things. And I've done them in pockets, right? I've done cold plunges on Saturdays with my wife outdoor at Lifetime Fitness over the winter. And we did 2 or 3 minute plunges and we did it together. It was a bonding thing. Then I'd go sit in the sauna after a workout. And so we tried to make the Saturdays, that's the day we do those type of things. But haven't scaled it at the consistency. Red lighter, again, I mentioned it earlier. It's one of those things that I think probably has incremental improvement.
It's not a big one.
Yeah.
Not a big one.
Hey, once you've hacked all those other things, why not, right? If you have the means and it's something that doesn't really change your day or get in the way of other things of getting ready for work, it's one of those things, why not, right? There are certain things that doesn't appear to be any real downside to them and only really potential upside, so why not?
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged on a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Yeah, so my personality is somebody that tinkers.
Yeah, me too.
I like to experiment. It's actually how I built our consulting practice for our clients is challenging the standards, challenging the norms, experimenting, measuring, seeing what works, and build on the things that work. And, so I think there's a lot of cross applicability.
Well, can we talk shop for a minute? I mean,
sure.
Because I think ultimately we don't just want to do these things for ourselves. I mean, I want to influence my family, my kids, my wife, and things like that. And maybe the friends around me, just like you're influencing me in this conversation. And hopefully we might be influencing some folks that are listening. However, there's a scalability that I really am interested in. And I actually had a guy last night talk to me about writing an article about diet nutrition in the benefits world and like, how could we see changes? And he said, hey, could I quote you on something? And I just came up with kind of my thoughts. My thoughts are, nothing we do from an insurance side is really going to solve the problem of health or a lack thereof in the US. And so therefore, we need to look at the way that we eat, the way that we move, the behaviors of the average American. If you truly want to see changes at an aggregate level, it's going to go all the way down to the root, right, of how we operate on a daily basis. So how do we take these things that we're talking about and put them in the group benefits world, right? Like, what are your thoughts around there? How do we get to where the average American is healthier and maybe we actually lower the cost of healthcare long-term because that's the case, right? Because the people are just generally healthier instead.
So I'm pretty cynical.
Okay.
So
That's okay.
I listened to the episode with Durrell.
Yeah.
I like what he's doing.
A bio coach, yeah.
Bio coach. It's very intriguing to me. I think the model, the way he described it, that's probably the best way I've heard somebody to be able to put something like this into a group health plan. But I'm skeptical because we've done different variations of wellness.
Oh, yeah.
And what you find in wellness, this is why I'm not a huge wellness proponent. It's counterintuitive of a health insurance guy. I'm a unit cost guy. Like, hey, let's get you your medicine. Instead of paying $50,000 for the medicine, let's pay $15,000.
Right.
And I'm going to cut your health insurance costs by giving the same exact thing. We're just paying less for the unit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's that much fat to be trimmed off and so much inside of our benefit plans. But that next iteration would be, how do we get people healthy so they're just using less units or not using the units at all?
Yeah.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
But what I found in my experience doing different levels of wellness, all the way from having wellness coaches that would work with the employees inside of our clients, is the people that are already doing wellness, the Spencer Smiths of the world, they're going to leap on this bandwagon immediately and they're going to love it. They're going to do it.
Yep.
Because that's their personality. They're already doing it. But it's the guy that is smoking 2 packs a day, eating a chicken fried steak and driving a truck. Or it's the CNA that's working between patients inside of a nursing home that doesn't have time to eat a healthy meal, or maybe doesn't have the means to go out and do all the research or the time, right? As soon as she leaves work, she's caring for her kids. And that is just, those are the people that we have to reach, and we have to make it accessible for them. You have to make it really 2 things. Really 3 things. It needs to be easy, it needs to be quick, and it needs to be cheap.
Yes.
All those 3 things.
Well, and that's what, so, you know.
Actually, you know what?
What?
As
Do you have a thought? Do you have a profound?
This is how my ideas come.
Okay.
They just come randomly. So it's like, you just asked me, what's the simple, what are the things that generate the most return? Because if I listed out my things that I do in a day, and there might be 10 things, but are there 2 of them that generate the most return? And whatever those 2 are, how do I incorporate those into that?
Yeah, and you'd say you say sleep, I say exercise. I mean, diet's a component of that, which would be a close third. I think maybe diet for a lot of people that don't have the time to exercise or might say they don't, right? Or don't have the time to sleep. That's a variable that could be controlled. I think one of those 3 big picture things, if we could control for one, obviously, ideally all 3, but if we could control for one, then, you know, you could see improvements in people's life. And this is where I get to. So like, have you seen the pictures of folks like on the beach in the 1960s in the United States, and there's not a single overweight person in sight?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, some people get into this world of, oh, well, it's genetics. I'm obese because it's genetic. There might be a component of that, but the genetics of the average United States citizen didn't change in 2 generations, where now everybody's just obese because of genetics. 60+% of the population is overweight or obese. Somewhere around 11 or 12% is diabetic, right? We know those things have catastrophic impacts on long-term health, which have catastrophic impacts on the health of a employee benefits plan. So what changed? And you probably, there are rabbit holes we could go down. There's conspiracies we can go down. But what has changed in the last couple generations, the U.S., where the average person was thin, now the average person is overweight.
So this is the compounding effect. It's the effect that little changes over time can have. Think about what's different today than it was 50, 60 years ago. The emphasis on physical fitness as a child in school, recess, PE. I look at what my kids do in PE today, it's a joke.
Is it? Okay.
It's a straight up joke. And then now my son, as the next grade that he moves into in middle school, they're doing away with PE.
Just gone.
Gone.
They're cutting it.
It's like, what? So that's happened.
Yeah.
You look at where people are getting their nutrition, but not only where are they getting it, what's the sourcing of that nutrition? So back 50, 60 years ago, there wasn't this easy access to junk calories the way that we have today. On every corner, there's a Jack in the Box and Taco Bell and McDonald's, and it's cheap and it's fast. And people are busy lives. That's where they're getting a lot of their food. And not only, let's exclude fast food, but let's just look at what's in the supermarkets. And it's filled with high fructose corn syrup, sodium, a lot of artificial ingredients, dyes, those sorts of things that may say it's not toxic per se, but it certainly has an effect on your body, especially consumed over a lifetime.
Yeah.
Because those are the things, that's why we're seeing a lot of these autoimmune conditions that we didn't see before. I think a lot of it has to do with the way we take certain medications like antibiotics, the foods that we consume, the pesticides that are on those foods, just all these things. And there's not one that you can point as the smoking gun, but I think it's the compounding effect of like all of these things happening at once.
Yeah.
And you're now seeing it. You look at the military, for example, 60 to 75% of military age Americans are not able to
pass the basic test. Yeah.
The test, the height and weight or the physical fitness to get in.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And those are the people that...
It's a problem in so many different capacities, right? That's a problem in the military from a readiness perspective. Right?
It is, but when I look at... So I want to make sure as I make that point that I'm not casting a stone or pointing a finger at individuals, because we're all a product of the environment that we're in. So one of the first things that we have to have is access to the knowledge.
Yes.
Right? You got to have access to knowledge, because there are a lot of people that want to be healthy, that want to be better. And I've gone through it. I mean, I was 270, 275 pounds. I was able to lose a big chunk of it pretty easily just by the way I changed my diet. But subsequent to that, I gained a lot of that back, and I've gone kind of like the yo-yo effect, if you will, just playing with different things. But I know weight is a real thing that people struggle with. And you got to have...
I saw my mom struggle with it her whole life. And I mean, she had bad lifestyle habits as well. Smoking was one of those things. And, I saw the chronic conditions that developed over time from her being sedentary and gaining weight. So I feel it because I saw it happen, and it ultimately led to her demise. So I look at those things and go, like, at least right now, there's a breakthrough of awareness, like the knowledge piece, right? So you can access the knowledge that we're discussing. We've all been influenced by the access to knowledge that we have, and that's one of those good things I actually think about social media. There's a lot of negative things, but the democratization of access to information that maybe used to be reserved for some sort of educational periodical or some academic journal or whatever. Now it's out there because people have a platform to speak. And so I think you're seeing a breakthrough of knowledge, of awareness of these things that you and I are talking about, so that it might start to influence masses of people, and we could see a generational shift for the good. There is also money and policy and a lot of other things that are still influencing the current status quo trajectory we're on. And so I think you have, a little bit of tension that's happening right now in our economy and our population, but I'm hoping the yo-yo effect is now going to happen the other direction.
Yeah, I'd hope so. A couple of thoughts that I have on that is, we talk about access to information. That information is readily available. You can go to YouTube, Google, TikTok, and if you want to find out about fitness, if you want to talk about nutrition, there are some of the world's most foremost experts that are out there that will just give you the information and you can use it. I think that's awesome. This is the democratization of information, right? But on top of that, there's a want to. And think about how many people want to lose weight. How many people want to be healthy? New Year's resolutions are a good example of that. But how many people follow through with them? So I don't think it's just a matter of access to information and want to. And this is really why I talk about how people make money in health insurance. I'm going to tie all this together because this is how you implement it into a plan.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we pay salespeople commission. If you own a company, you're paying people's commission. It's because you want to incentivize the behavior that you want them to have, which is to go out and sell more, generate revenue and value for your company. Well, in health insurance, if you just look at the way the carriers make money, the brokers make money, the doctors and hospitals make money, how the PBMs make money, how everybody's making money is really counter to the interests that companies have, which is providing the same or better benefits, but keeping the costs in check, right? So once you align the way people make money, you're incentivizing the behavior that you want. You have to turn the incentive model on its head and get these people to act in your best interest, not against your best interest. And when they do act in your best interest, they profit. So how does this, going in a step further, and I'm having this idea as we're having the conversation, is how do you take that a step further and get employees to be part of that? Well, we're already doing it in our model where if employees make good decisions, they get their healthcare for free. You get your surgery for free. You get your baby birth for free. You get your cancer infusion for free, your medicine for free if you're going through. But if you don't, you're going to go through the normal channel of your benefits, and you're going to use your
co-insurance deductible.
Deductible, out of pockets, all those other things.
Yeah.
But I think based on the conversation I heard you have with Darrell, because I'd never heard that model before, it's new to me, but this thought that we could take it even a step further, and people that are engaging in the health insurance system, if they're willing to go through certain steps, getting education, monitoring certain things, if they're willing to go through that process, we can further incentivize them in a way. So it's not only do I want to be healthy, do I have the knowledge to be healthy, but is there an incentive and a reward?
Usually a financial incentive, right? I mean, would you say that whether that's you're removing the cost or maybe you're lowering the premium or maybe there could be a reward as well?
100%.
Yeah.
I use this phrase all the time. I learned this in economics in grad school. We're all garbage men.
Okay.
And economics professor came into the class and he said, y'all are all garbage men. And it's like, I'm not a garbage man. What are you talking about? And he said, if I was to pay you $75,000, would you hop on the back of a garbage truck to pick up the trash? And I said, no. Okay, what if I paid you $100,000? No. $500,000. I was like, well, I'm kind of getting interested now.
Yeah.
If I give you $1 million, I was like, I'll do whatever you want for $1 million.
Yeah.
I'll go pick up the trash for $1 million. So he said, exactly. You're a garbage man. The price just hasn't gotten high enough to turn you into one, to get you to act like one. And so when I think about that, economics is a study of human behavior to incentives or disincentives. Carrots and sticks is how I describe it. If there's a way to design a carrot that's attractive enough for somebody to do what they need to do to get it, or unfortunately, sometimes we have to create a stick. And I think of this as the boundaries. And I think that's one of the things that causes companies to pay more for healthcare and health insurance than they should, which is this idea that we're going to create this all-you-can-eat buffet, pay a cover charge, and it's unlimited. It's like going to an all-inclusive resort.
Yeah.
And we're just going to open every bar and every restaurant. And what do you find at those typically, right? Usually the quality is not as good because we're getting ready to open the cupboards here. We've got to make money.
Yeah.
So I think about it from that perspective is, okay, well, let's do this now, but let's put some boundaries in place.
Yeah.
So that we can provide the highest quality, but we can keep the cost in check.
Well, that's where an obligation as an individual comes into play too, and that's one I literally had this conversation yesterday. I'll mention it again. Just the idea that if you do self-fund a plan, you maybe let your employees know. Let your employees, obviously you design plans that incentivize them. Then if clearly they have a direct connection to the outcome and they'll modify their behavior. But if a self-funded plan allows you to expose your members, your employees, to the notion that they participate in the outcome. If you're mad about premiums going up, you're involved in that. You contribute that to a degree, and some people are higher or lower, and some people have no control over how much they contribute to a plan, and I get that. But ultimately, all those employees play a role in how much the cost is going up, right? So should there be some obligation for them to participate to a certain degree, right? And actively participate.
So there is a way to do that.
Okay.
So think about how companies do profit sharing plans today. And there are companies out there that if we meet certain targets, we're going to have a bonus for employees. And you really could do the same thing for health plans. And I have a couple clients that are looking at doing this now where we explain to them.
Does the lights go down? Yeah, that was weird. Weirded me out. Like you got mood lighting came down for this particular. We'll keep talking, man. No, it's just I got distracted because the lights went down.
So is there a way to share what you just described with the employees that, hey, we're taking ownership of this. And if it performs well, we're going to provide a bonus structure. And the way the structure is done is premium holidays.
Premium holiday,
But think about what people paid. I mean, I'm not talking about Fortune 500 companies. I'm talking most of the companies that might be inside of a captive. They got 50 to 500, maybe 1,000 employees. They're mid-sized employers. Inside of those companies, if you really benchmark what the average employees are paying, maybe not for employee only, but when you start adding spouses, children, and families, it gets expensive. For your average 100-life company, they're paying $1,500, $1,800 a month for their family, which is more than a car payment. It's probably equivalent to a house payment, right?
Yep.
If you go to somebody and say, if this plan performs really, really well, all of us, we're going to give you the ways to help manage it. You're going to become a steward of this. You benefit if it performs well. I like that idea. I'm a huge proponent of giving people incentive, and it's almost like having ownership, it's having skin in the game.
Well, skin in the game, and even a lot of companies use the term family, and I don't know if it's
I don't like that.
I don't either.
We debated that internally at our firm. I don't like the term family. I don't get.
That's what I'm saying. I was about to, and I agree with you. I was about to say, I cringe at it's not your family, but they use that term. Well, what does family do though? Family holds each other accountable, right? Family participates. As the provider of the household, have certain obligations. My wife, as sort of the caretaker of the household, has certain obligations. The family as a whole unit, though, has obligations to one another to hold each other accountable, to make each other better, and all those things. And so that is a way that, again, cringing at the idea of calling it a work family, but you participate. You are part of this.
It's
thing.
a community.
Community, yeah, we
I like
use that term.
term.
Yeah, community. Obviously, at Pareto, we use that a lot.
Community is a good word.
But I want to go back to what you said, and maybe we'll kind of work towards the end here. I share your cynicism about wellness, and as we're talking, and I was thinking, I do think this is going to be a generational, if not multi-generational shift,
100%.
right? So it's easy for me to say, as a guy that never got overweight, it's easy for me to talk about these things. If I was in a situation where I was 50 pounds overweight, I know it would be a lot harder to get back to this baseline. So I'm going to go ahead and confess that right now. Why I bring that up is those. My hope in the way that I operate and what I talk about is to influence the 16-year-old, the 22-year-old, to never let themselves get that far in the first place, because it's so much easier to maintain if you don't go too far. It is so much harder to come back once you've let it go. And so I think about the 60% or so that are overweight. That's a lot harder to alter the behavior of them to get them back to a more healthier baseline. Mm-hmm. The teenagers and the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds that are not overweight yet, if you can convince them to do the things that when they're 50 or 60 keep them from being overweight, I think that's an easier task to scale, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But the big $1 million question is, how do you convince them and incentivize them to do it? And I think, honestly, the education starts much earlier than 16 or 17.
Oh, of course.
Because habits are formed by then, and habits are hard to break. So I always think about the difference between perception and perspective. You know the difference between the two?
Not offhand, so I'd love to hear you.
So,
I mean, I know the definitions, but.
Well, think about this, right? So we're talking about employers. How do they adopt this? And you and I have this perception that everybody should understand this, and we should be willing to put this into place because it's going to help everybody. That's our perception. But the perspective is what is that other person that we're thinking about? The business owner, the CFO, the VP of HR. What do they truly believe? That's their perspective. We think we know what they know or what they're thinking, but we don't really know. And so I have this perception that this owner knows why this is important, but he thinks about it and it's like, I'm not interested in health. Why would my employees be interested in this, right? And I don't want to invest the money in it because I don't see the value. But if every owner, I think decision makers, owners, CFO, and HR professionals, if they viewed their employees like an athletic team, think about the Dallas Cowboys or the Mavs or the Rangers, those owners and those executives that run those teams, they're viewing those athletes as athletes. They think about performance, the nutrition, the training, all of those things so those guys can go out and perform. But if we looked at our employee base the exact same way, these are people that come in, and if they feel better about themselves, they've got energy, they're going to do more. They're going to be more productive. And we should view our employees as a team that we should be supporting. And so and I know a couple of my partners, we talk to our teammates, we talk to our teams about the importance of sleep, taking care of yourself, moving your body, eating a nutritious diet, because I know that if people are adopting these sorts of things, we're all performing something.
Yeah.
And I want, if you feel better, if you look better, if you have more energy, you're going to perform better. I don't care what the task is.
Yep. When it's not just the performance, right? As we start about unit cost of healthcare, not even just lowering the unit cost, but lowering the units. The obvious advantage to that coaching that you're providing is that hopefully it's causing them to do things that 15 years from now prevent them from being diabetic, or prevent hopefully that maybe a heart attack that wasn't foreseen. And so that's why when I talk about generations or multi-generations, right? If we're speaking to that generation now, and the frustration I think that you and I share is, wellness as a traditional, solution hasn't really worked. How do we get people to actually apply this in a group chassis and do it in an employer-sponsored plan? Well, maybe it's the talking to the young folks now that eventually are running these businesses 20 to 25 years from now, that they're instilling those practices inside of their business, and they're making benefits decisions that infuse that worldview into what they choose. I think that's how you maybe get generational massive shifts in population health. It's going to take a lot of time to do that, right? And we're barely inching our way, I think, hopefully back towards the right direction at this very moment in 2024.
There are interesting models. Darrell at BioCoach is talking about one that I find interesting.
Yeah.
I think that there's a tipping point that happens. there's an investment that's involved. There's a change in mindset and thinking about the problem. You got to shift the prism a little bit to find a different solution. And there's going to be a point where people see the investment and they see the return. And it's just like the things that we're doing today. It started with one employer, and that employer became the case study for employer 2. And then employer 1 and 2 became the case study for employer 3. And then once you have 3, 4, 5, it's easy to get to 10. It's easy to get to 50. It's easy to get to 100 at that point, because the proof is already there. And I think we're going to get to a point where somebody is going to figure this out in the right way, in the right model. Because what I hear others talking about is different than the wellness models that we've seen in the past. Somebody's going to understand, an owner, a CFO, an HR professional has to understand, I'm putting this money in, how do I get return? And all of the calculations, because people, somebody in a wellness profession is going to see this and they're going to be like, oh, we got a way to get a 10x return. Yeah, the math you're going to use, I'm a finance guy, show me the math and don't include the funny math. Don't include the funny math of like, we're going to get a 50% productivity increase in your employees. Like, no, don't give me that. Show me how you reduced unit, not only utilization, show me how you've reduced utilization of insulin or GLP-1s or other chronic use medications, or you've reduced the incidences of my surgeries for orthopedics, or you show me how you've reduced it using the data. And then and what we work in is show me how you've reduced the unit cost. That's super easy for me to show an employer. Hey, right now you're paying $42,000 for this cancer infusion. I give you the exact same thing at a fraction of the cost. Same drug, same label, same everything. Which one do you want to pay? Do you want to pay $8 for a gallon of gas, or you want to pay $2 for a gallon of gas? People look at that and say, that's a pretty easy switch. No problem. That's why what I do is pretty easy now. But these other models where you're talking about how do we incorporate fitness and wellness and access to medications by doing the right things, and teaching people how to eat. And
well, I look at, and I think we'll wrap this up. And I was looking at my blood sugar. It dropped a few points, but now I'm going to be looking at this stupid thing every 15 minutes.
For the next 10 days, you're going to be glued to your
screen. And my screen time's gone up. What the hell happened? But I look at like the Lifetime Fitness model. I'm a Lifetime guy. You mentioned Darrell a couple times. He was a trainer there. They've got this really interesting model where they've got a daycare component where you can get to up to 2 hours of kid care a day, and they're teaching kids everything from creative to karate to gymnastics. It's all play-based, but they actually keep the kids occupied. So there's a family component to that. Then they've got a cafe where the cafe is delivering healthy food. They've got a sauna. They've got a pool. They've got a steam room. They've got classes. Obviously, you exercise there. I work there sometimes. I'll set up shop in the cafe because the Wi-Fi is good. They've got good coffee. I'll work there and do Zooms there. Eventually, I'm wondering if you could almost build a business around a Lifetime Fitness where you could live there. You could literally work there like it was a co-working space. You hop up and do 20 minutes on the treadmill after you eat and come back down and finish your Zooms, then go work out afterwards. Could you almost convince people to spend their entire day at something like an expanded Lifetime Fitness so that the core of their day is revolving around health? Is that a crazy idea?
No, I know companies that have done that.
Okay.
We actually did that at a firm I worked at, and they built a gym, and they had a trainer, and I would just leave at different parts of the day to go work out. It was really nice. I built a gym in my office.
Okay.
People made fun of me, but I had rings hanging from the ceiling
But see, that's why I think you scale it with a big box shop so that the pricing is spread across multiple employers. So it's like a co-working space. So it's not one company bearing the cost of the entirety of the build, right?
It sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm not saying it is the solution, but I just looked at it and I think about it. Man, I could spend almost all my day up there. And it's so much easier if I'm like, yeah, hey, I got a 30-minute window. Why don't I just do a 20-minute walk on the treadmill and come back down and keep my day going?
I think you're hitting on a bigger issue, which is culture.
Okay.
And what you're describing to me, it almost reminds me of Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And companies I talk to, they talk about their culture. Culture is a really important thing inside of Hotchkiss. And when I look at two resumes, think of an account manager and account executive, same exact skills. One of them may be a really good fit for our culture and one may not. How do you create a differentiator and make your culture known so that you're attracting people that want to work with you?
Right.
And so I think about, there's things like what you just described. If you built a gym, this is probably a hack for employers. If you want people that are going to be healthy and low utilized of your plan, build a gym and advertise the gym as a benefit. I'm being facetious here, but
have walking treadmills with a laptop hooked up, and
do all these sorts of things and promote that sort of lifestyle inside of your company. The people that are not on board with that, they're not going to want to work there.
Exactly.
The people that are on board with it are going to be attracted and come and be there, and they're probably going to be higher performance. They're going to be more type A, probably. They're going to.
Absolutely, you're right, because you're building a culture around, like, we believe this is of such a high level of importance that we sort of built our space around your ability to access these tools whenever you want them.
It's push versus pull. So if you think about it, are you attracting, or are you having to pull people along, push people along, right?
Yeah.
So are people on board and want to be a part of this culture, or are you having to force people? So I think about some of the employees that we all know, right? I'm going to continue to smoke my 2 packs a day and eat the chicken fried steak and drink a 6-pack of beer when I get home. Like, that guy is going to be really hard to convince to subscribe to this lifestyle. So you're going to have a lot harder time getting that person, but that's the person that we absolutely need.
But
to engage.
I think you're right. And then this is, we'll kind of end here, but next time you and I have a podcast, which we'll do it again this year, I'm going to book 3 hours and we're just going to talk as long as we feel like it, because I've always wanted to do an epically long podcast. And I also want to do one where there isn't really any premise that we go in with. It's just, let's just see what comes out of it. So we'll do that next, so we don't get rushed for time.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It is, you're creating a culture. And, I work in a company that has a fantastic culture. You can tell the companies have great cultures. So I think you're right. Maybe that is the way that we solve some of this, right? You're pulling up the monitor, so I wanted to, we can finish there.
The last thing I would tie this up, and this is just kind of reminds me of what employers should be thinking about as how do we tie all this together?
Yeah.
These devices, whether it's a Fitbit, a Whoop, a CGM, a scale, body fat meter, whatever that is, like, these are ways that we measure performance, and we measure are we doing the right things that are moving us in the right direction. And I mentioned I'm a tinkerer, and so I've had some of the most amazing clients when I started this business where I didn't really have a proof of concept, and I would tell these employers, you're sick and tired of paying more money. I think this is going to work. Let's try it. Your worst case scenario is if it doesn't work, we'll move you back to the old way you were doing it. Think about the upside that's here. And so I had clients that allow me to experiment with things like this on them, as the proverbial CGM on their health plan. And that's really what's guided us as far as determining how do we provide more and reduce the cost. And it's experimenting and measuring and monitoring and continuing that process of experimenting. And so now we know what works because we've been doing it for close to a decade.
Well, that's why I love talking to you, man. You combine all the things that I personally and professionally love to discuss. And so that's what I was saying. Next time we're going to carve out just as much time where there is, we'll ramble till not a single listener sticks with it the whole time. But for those of the folks that listen, I really appreciate you guys letting us kind of talk about something that Chris and I are both passionate about, but we do want to deploy these things in a professional setting as well. And it's something that I literally think about on a daily basis. And I appreciate you giving me the CGM. My blood sugar's down to 119, so it's dropped 4 points, and I'll be obsessively looking all day. Hopefully you guys, let's go. Oh, go for a walk.
Go for a walk and bring it down.
Yeah, I'll go for a walk. Okay. And maybe I'll update folks at some point down the road what I learned from this episode as well. So thanks, Chris.
Can you ask me where you can find me?
Where can I find
that question out?
You, Chris Hamilton, if I'm interested in getting a hold of you, Chris Hamilton?
So LinkedIn is a really, I like to connect with people and just share ideas. LinkedIn is a great place. I created a YouTube channel, Benefits Insider, and I share both short and long form content. I basically give our strategies away of what we're doing. It's been great because it's also spurred conversation with other advisors and collaboration, idea sharing. I also never thought I'd have this, but I have a TikTok. Where I also share quite a bit of short form content. So.
Yeah, Chris, you are absolutely one of the best examples of leveraging content in the employee benefit space. I bring you up all the time. I'm like, if you want to know what to do, just go follow Chris Hamilton. Literally, that's all you got to do. But hey, man, I appreciate you. We got to wrap it up so we can get out for the next people. But I appreciate you, dude. And
thank you.